Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Walworth.
I'm Christina McGrath, and we are Knitting Tech Editors.
Intro.
Boop.
Here at Tech Tip Talk, we answer your questions about knitting pattern design, technical editing, and all the technical aspects of working in our craft.
This month, our guest is designer and educator Julie Robinson. Julie's insight into grading, sizing, and fashion trends is really needed in our industry, and we're so glad she's out there doing what she does. We're going to hear about that today. So let's welcome her in.
And if you are here live, throw any questions you have for Julie into the comments and we'll do our best to answer. We're watching them right now. You want to move her up, Christina?
Yes. Okay, let's get you in the middle so we can all look at you and hear you. Hi, Julie.
Hey, Julie.
Hi.
How are you doing? So
I'm
happy to
doing
have you
great.
here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
We're so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
We like to start right at the beginning, Julie. So, how did you get started working in the knitting industry?
So I had always been a crafter, and knitting was one of my great loves when I was younger. When I decided to pursue a career, I studied fashion design, and I was working in the fashion industry for mostly big box stores, department stores for about 10 years. And one day I was like, you know what? I can't quite find a pattern that is exactly what I had in my head. And it suddenly occurred to me that I also had the skills to write my own pattern. And that was kind of the beginning of investigating the knitting pattern industry as an industry. And I was really lucky early on to be introduced to Sarah, who, of course, introduced me to Christina. And the rest is kind of history.
Well, the big question is what you wanted to make, did it actually work? Like when you realized you had the skills?
I did. Yeah, I made myself a raglan sweater and I was very pleased with myself. So of course I'm like, okay, maybe I could publish this thing, maybe I could get other people interested in making what I want to make. And that first one was a little bit more rough. It was very easy for me to make something for myself, obviously, because I'm right here, I'm right in front of me, I understand my own body. But when I started trying to write out the instructions for other people, that was a new way of thinking about garments, because obviously I learned a lot about garment design and the technical aspects of design from my training and throughout my career. But the way that you talk to different people about those aspects and about how to execute certain instructions is just very different from what I had been used to. So, dealing with a factory and people who are working on machines and people who have, really, really extensive expert background in knitwear design is very different than talking to somebody who is, even a very accomplished knitter for, tens of years, many decades. It's just a different way of communicating.
And it's a tricky communication. We find that this is the heart of what we see the problem is in our industry, is communicating things effectively to the hand maker. And it's hard. It's a really difficult form of communication.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that I noticed is that in the industry where I was coming from, there's like more of a shared language amongst the people working there. And I think in the craft industry, things are a lot more disparate. People come to craft from so many different walks of life and so many different experiences. And so I think a lot, like you said, a lot of the job is about communicating effectively, communicating clearly, and just trying to take a little extra time to understand one another and understand where people are coming from, because sometimes people will try to talk to me very intelligently about something. They're not using the right words, but if you can take that time and try to just really hear them and see through what they're saying, you can usually get to the heart of the matter and solve their issue.
So you started with knitting design and creating patterns for other people to work, but you've gone farther than that.
And it's been so cool to see, like, I've worked with you all these years and all the cool stuff you've put out, and now what you're doing is so exciting for us.
So
Oh,
you are
thank
doing
you.
exciting work now. So tell us about the courses that you offer.
Yeah, so I started off teaching pattern grading, which is, again, how I met Sarah, one of the very first classes that I ever taught. And since then, we've been refining. So I currently do pattern grading bootcamp, which I do every January. And it is a deep dive into all things sizing related. So the goal is to help people who want to create a size inclusive pattern range. So mostly focusing on incorporating plus sizes into your range and learning how to address different shapes of people, learning how to make intelligent choices for putting together a size chart that's unique to you, unique to your customer, unique to your brand, things like that. Yeah, it's a really advanced course. There's a lot of research involved in it, and yeah, that was really the beginning, which is kind of funny because it is such like a niche within a niche, right? Because I know Sarah remembers back when we first started teaching our class together, there was nothing out there like this for knitters at all or crocheters. And yeah, it was a real big bummer. And that was something, another reason that I met Sarah before we started work on that class was I was looking for a technical editor for a pattern I was working on. And I started asking if people knew how to grade. And when I was interviewing editors, most of them would come back and say, no, I don't know. And I was like really just shocked. And, you know, I just think that it's a, like I said, it's a niche within a niche. And I understand that a lot of people don't want to invest the time in learning how to do it because it can be a little overwhelming, especially when you're just getting started. But, you know, I think to live out the ideals that we have as crafters, as makers, it's something that I think is worthy of your time as a technical editor and as a designer. And I'm really happy that there's been such an overwhelming positive response to that course. And yeah, people value it. And you know, like I said, it takes a long time sometimes to get started, to get up to speed and really incorporate it in a meaningful way. But it's well worth the effort in my experience.
So maybe we can back up a little bit and define some terms for members of our audience who don't understand what is the technical side of design. And then I want to hear about Design Lab.
Okay, yeah, let's bring it all home. I'm making a big old soup here. Yeah, so something that I talk about a lot, I usually do a little, at least one free workshop before I do a paid workshop because these are, you know, kind of big multi-week commitments, usually around 8 weeks of instruction. So one of the things that I talk about a lot in my free courses is about the design development process. And so everything that I teach is all kind of under this umbrella. And so we always start off with like the creative side. And that's what most people think of when they think of design. It's coming up with ideas. It's looking at mood boards. It's picking colors and yarns and swatching and all that fun stuff. And
fun indeed. It's the stuff that we all dream about, like, oh, this must be the best part of design.
It is the best part of design. We can stay in that phase, that ideation phase, that early part forever. But if you want to make an actual pattern, if you want to have a physical sample, then we have to, you know, kind of nail some things down and be like, this is exactly what I'm making. This is where all the seams are going to go. If you have seams, this is where I want my neckline. This is how I want it to fit. And then we have to go about making the object. You have to go about writing those instructions. And so that's where all of those technical skills come in, right? Because otherwise it's just going to stay a drawing on a page or an idea in your mind. So what Sarah wanted to talk about Design Lab is my other class. And this is a new class that I just started. I just wrapped it up. We're doing our final office hours next week. But yeah, Design Lab is all about those technical aspects of design. So like I was saying, we've got a really incredible response from people who are interested in learning pattern grading. But something that I noticed in my students who joined me in pattern grading bootcamp was that a lot of them were missing certain things in their technical understanding of, garment construction. So they would be asking me these questions, and I'm like, okay, I can see why you think that this is a question about pattern grading, because there's an overlap between the grading process and the design process. But, the question that they're asking me at the heart, it wasn't a question of grading. It was a question of design, something like, how big should I make this pocket? And how often, it's like, where should I put the pocket? That's a design question. How often should I change the size of the pocket between my sizes? That's a grading question. So that's just an example of something that you might come across where it's like, is this a grading question? Is this a design question? So I started Design Lab trying to help people get a better grasp on how to actually design the garment so that when they get to the grading process, things go a lot smoother. And I'm really excited because I have some students currently in Design Lab who've taken the grading course, and that's exactly what they said. They're like, I thought that I needed a grading class, and it's helped them a lot, like I said, in extending their size range, but what they were really, really missing were some of those key elements, like learning about the actual construction of the garment. And having been through Design Lab now, they're like off to the races. The design is done. It looks the way that they want it to. It's fitting them amazing, and it's going to be published next year. So that's exactly the sort of thing that I was looking for when I put out Design Lab, and it's happening. So
you're right. They're like different skills, like knitting design and then pattern writing and grading that design and like they're these separate skills, and it's a lot to put together, and it's a lot of different skills.
In the fashion industry, those are all handled by different people, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's something I think a lot of people don't understand, is that there is definitely a difference between being a creative designer and being a technical designer. There's literally somebody on pretty much every team who's labeled a technical designer. So my role has usually been to either be a creative designer or something that's kind of in the middle, which is called a product developer. But yeah, in the hand knitting industry, as a micro business, as a solo entrepreneur, you have to wear all the hats. So
we do all of it.
Yeah, independent designers are doing all the things. I mean, it's a tall order. It's a lot that like you said, it typically was happening with a team of many different professionals.
Yeah. And so, in the world of hand knitting, usually, right, it's the designer and it's you guys, it's the technical editors. And between the two of us, we really share that technical designer role,
I think this is a tricky part, is when you are almost forced to, as a knitwear designer within the hand knitting industry, to take on all these hats without any training or without any past. You have to like bring your own skills, but maybe you don't know that you aren't writing the patterns clearly. Maybe you don't know how to grade. So that can be a real hurdle for some people who are just coming into this because, I want to make money at this. Well, but
I think that's what's happening a lot, is that you don't know what you don't know. So you don't even know what questions to ask. You don't know why something isn't working until it doesn't. And sometimes that can like really shoot you in the foot. It's tricky.
Yeah, no, I was going to say exactly the same thing, Christina. You're totally right. It's really about trying to learn enough to be able to start asking the right questions, and I think that's just for any new skill. So yeah, I think you guys are totally right, and sometimes it can be hard because, especially in this social media era, people can get, popular because they made something that's beautiful and wonderful and they made it for themselves. But like I said, once you try to make that switch and you start involving other people and doing things for other people, it gets a lot more complicated pretty quickly. And you don't know what you don't know. So, we're trying to put it together, some more resources for people. What were you going to say?
Yeah. And this is where you need mentorship and you need help and you need training. And this is where you step in and into the industry to fill a gap there to help people to get the skills that they need. So thank you everyone who's joining us here live. Please feel free to open up the chat and ask a question. We are right here watching it, and feel free to ask Julie anything that you would like to know. Our next question kind of takes us to this thing of what are the hurdles that your students have come up against?
I think the biggest hurdle that designers come up against, new designers and my students have also come up against, is the visualization portion. I think as makers, you probably get to a point where you are reading a pattern and you can start to see it in your mind's eye as you're reading it. Like that's a kind of skill that you get after a period of time. And I think having that level of vision and clarity while designing before the item is made, that's really where I'm trying to get my students to. You know, I'm always trying to come up with ways to help them estimate better. So one of the things that I get asked a lot about is like, how much ease should I put in, you know, any given place, right? And you know, that's something that for me is relatively easy to see and to estimate and to visualize. But that's because I've had a lot of practice, right?
So there's some intuition there.
There's some intuition there. And so I think for me, honestly, that was like one of the hardest things for me to try to like put into the course, because that was a question I was like confronted with pretty early on. And I was like, oh, I just do it. And I'm like, but how do I teach somebody else how to do that? So throughout this particular round of Design Lab, that's one of the biggest upgrades that I have coming down the pipe is some more resources for makers on, you know, giving them some visual references that they can look at, you know, now and into the future, and coming up with some, I don't know what you want to call it, like a cheat sheet or something like that. It's like, okay, you know, within this range, it will usually give you this kind of fit, like those sort of things. So
that's going to be a helpful document to have, Julie.
It's going to be a helpful document, I think.
That is valuable stuff. Do you find that there are some people who can't visualize things easily? Like, is that a big mental hurdle for certain ways of thinking, or maybe people who have neurodivergence?
I haven't encountered anybody who said straight up that they cannot do it, you know? Like I said, I think it's just about coming up with multiple modes. As a teacher, I'm not into locking people into like one way of thinking. My way of teaching is really founded in trying to help my students understand, you know, why they're doing things. So I feel pretty strongly that if, you know, I came to somebody who's just like, I can't see things in my mind, you know, like that's part of my neurodivergence. I feel like there are ways that we can get around that, you know? So things like providing visual examples and be like, okay, well, this is what this looks like. I'm going to label it. I'm going to tell you how big it is. And, you know, I'm going to show you how it looks in, you know, these different scenarios. So
That's awesome.
There's a question for you in the comments about sizing, grading and sizing. Well, let's take a look at it. To be considered inclusive, how small should the size range go? What are the common challenges when grading smaller size?
Okay. For the most part, I see people go down to around a 30-inch bust, full bust circumference. Some people go down to about a 28, but I usually don't see too much smaller than that. So one of the most common things I see when grading smaller sizes is people tend to be overall a little more petite on that end. So I think that's like one of the biggest challenges of creating a inclusively sized chart is, you know, as you guys know, because I know you have one in the new book that's coming out, coming up with a chart that works for as many people as possible, because you guys know that there's never going to be like one single chart that works for everybody. And so at the smaller end, what I end up doing is in the smallest, maybe like 2 sizes, I'll end up incorporating some elements of petite design. So things are going to be a little bit more compact, because I have found through my testing and talking to my customers that the people who make those sizes tend to be more petite. But, you know, at the other side of things, I don't incorporate, for example, you know, like tall sizing for my larger sizes. I keep the vertical measurements more in line with a average height person, because that's, again, something that I found works better for my customers at that size of the range. So.
And that's another thing that comes with like experience and testing, like you said, over time and practice and learning that, you know, it's not necessarily like a rule, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if too, like you address the girth or the circumference of smaller sizing, but then you leave room in the pattern. This is what I always tell a lot of my clients. You leave room in the pattern for modification. Like in the same way, if you were sewing, you would have like where you cut like the pattern, make it longer at a certain point. Have you found that that's a step that designers take?
Like a tool.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I do in some of my patterns. So, for example, once you get to a place, you know, where you'd be, you know, around the chest area, I'll include a note and be like, hey, if you want to, this might be a place that you could put some bust darts, and here's why, and here's how, and, you know, just like a little short description. I won't put like a full tutorial on bust darts. I'll link out to some more in-depth examples, but, you know, I try to set my knitters up for success by telling them how to identify if they are included in this group, and try to give them an idea of the terms and the words, right, that they should be using to find the information that they need.
So let's hop over to talking more about size inclusivity. How do you think the industry can achieve true size inclusivity without it being merely lip service? We thought a lot about how to ask this question, because
Like, how do we phrase this? Because there's a lot of that, right?
Yeah, no, there totally
that.
is. Yeah, it can be kind of frustrating sometimes. I mean, I love seeing people talk about size inclusivity, but I feel like the thing that can be missing in certain instances is the action, coming up with the action and committing to it. I think there's some industry leaders I've seen say that things like, you know, like, oh, we're going to update our size chart, but then it just never seems to materialize. So I think some of these larger companies really should be, you know, stepping up and doing that work, because it can be frustrating to see individuals in our industry time and again try to take this on themselves to do research. And as much as I admire that, you know, because we're all makers, we have that DIY spirit, there are some things that you need money and resources to accomplish, and having good in-depth size information is one of those things. So, you know, I'm talking about having standards as far as like how people measure themselves, because, you know, again, as much as I love my fellow maker, if you just open up a survey and let people do whatever they want in their homes, there's no way of telling who did it right and who's, you know, like, it's all self-reported.
There's no control.
There's no control. Yeah. So that's something that I see. And then the other thing is that even if for you as an individual, you got a lot of responses, it's usually not enough to be statistically significant. And so, like, again, I'm not saying this to try to be like down on people or tell them that they shouldn't do it. It's like, at this point, these are the only people who are doing anything, right? But I say all of this because this is why you need to see more people at larger companies stepping up and doing this work because they have the resources and this could be done and things could be better. And I just don't see why it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, because anecdotal evidence can't always be reliable. And then you might even be, like making promises that aren't going to be true, or saying things that might not be right, that might even be like, a negative thing to do, like the opposite of helpful.
Or
Yeah.
using data that's not gonna actually help you design.
Exactly. I mean, I know that there's like some really, people doing some really good work out here. Like Pom Pom is always doing great. Nitty was early on into expanded sizing. There's people out here who are trying to make things happen. And I think I've seen more people take on that commitment to an expanded size range and including more plus size knitters into their patterns. And obviously it's just something that we need to try to keep rolling. So.
And while we've talked about this before, just in our little like group of tech editors and stuff, but what is a size inclusive pattern? What are the qualities of it? Can we talk a little bit about that? I know there's a range. Like we might say, well, we can go by Ravelry's definition with this, which is a 58 chest circumference, which is the highest, that the base of what the highest should be. But do you have any thoughts on that? Not that this should be prescriptive. I'm just to say that to our audience up front. But what are your thoughts behind when you design a size inclusive pattern? What's the range?
My range usually goes up to a 62 or a 64 inch body circumference. And from my research, from what I've been able to access, the resources that I've been able to access, that's what we have the most accurate information for. So, I know that's obviously not inclusive of everyone, right? But I feel pretty strongly that people who insist on publishing for sizes that are, as high as like 70 inch circumference, sometimes it feels a little performative because like I just know from experience, like after a certain point, like this is all conjecture. It's all just kind
Extrapolated.
of extrapolated. Yeah. So
it's like if there's not good body size information to build a pattern off of, then you again might be doing more harm than good.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just not something that I don't want to say I'm not interested in doing it as a designer, but like you said, like I would rather put out something that I'm really solid on and something that I have information, backing me up. I can see a counter argument where people are like, well, the pattern is like a basis for people to start something with. They can always adapt. But I guess I just feel like, I feel like at that point, like I said, if I am as a designer just kind of extrapolating on nothing, that doesn't make me feel particularly good about my product. But I can see why people still want to do it and give people an option if they choose to make the pattern at that point.
Well, you're trying to base your work and your sizes that you're offering on good information that will work out the way you intend.
Exactly.
That's good.
And there is this whole aspect of being a designer where you need to produce something that people can trust. So if you're struggling with the base aspect of it, maybe you just take it where you can take it.
Take it to where you can take it. Yeah. Take it to where you have guidance and then be like, okay, you know what? I've done what I can.
Do you think there's a room in the industry for size inclusivity for more conversation between designers? Like, hey, this is how, do you feel like that's the way to achieve size inclusivity is for us to talk? Like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do with this raglan. I'm struggling. How have you guys solved this problem?
Yeah, definitely. I see those kind of conversations happening a lot actually in Design Lab. What you're talking about, like, oh, how do I achieve X, Y, and Z? Because like I said, a lot of those particular questions come back to understanding your design truly and fully, and, being like, where exactly do I want this design line to go? Where do I want this graphic to fall? Like all those sort of things. And once you have that in your mind, you can kind of very easily put it onto a body in a size chart. Assuming that you have a good quality size chart, you're pretty much ready to go.
Right. I'm just wondering if the way forward is for us all to like collaborate together to find a
To
way
be
to make this work.
collaborating.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
be collaborating.
Yeah, collaboration is absolutely key to learning, like you can't learn in a vacuum.
That's
No,
right.
and all of it works together. It's important to collaborate and communicate and share information and work together, but you also need to have reliable information to learn from and to be able to implement what
Yeah,
you're
because eventually
working
you
out.
got to execute it in your own spreadsheet, in your
Right,
own
Yeah.
pattern
right,
text.
right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are the steps that a designer needs to take to be successful? What do you feel are the most important steps?
After imagination, which I know that we all have as makers, because that's why we're here, right? We all have very specific ideas about what we want our items to look like. Um, I think, yeah, just like I keep saying, having that understanding of the garment and exactly how it goes together and why that garment works that way. So something I see a lot of beginner designers do is they have like an idea, for example, of how they want maybe like a sleeve to be executed. And I have a lot of students who are interested in seamless design. So I love that for them. Sometimes seamless design is just not the best way to go about that. And so, having an understanding, like I said, of what you want to accomplish and what sort of concessions you might have to make if you're going to make a garment seamed versus unseamed. Um, I think that's really something key to being a good designer, because after you publish your design, right, you're going to have to explain this thing to people. You're going to have to help them out and figure out, how are they going to go about making this. So you need to be able to explain your yarn choice to them. You need to explain how to pick a size. You need to be able to help them, what if they're between sizes? Do you think they should go up? Do you think they should go down? Is there anything specific about the design that, they need to know? So if you're using a stitch repeat that doesn't stretch very much, for example, is there a way for them to modify that if they have broad shoulders or anything like that? So yeah, just having that like deep understanding. I think that's something that I see a lot in newbie designers, is that they make something and it fits them. Like I keep saying, they make something, it fits them, it looks great on them, it looks great in the sample, in the photos. And for other people, unless that knitter happens to be accomplished enough to kind of see what's going on by themselves, the designer might not be as effective in helping them make those choices.
Really understanding the reason behind all your choices in your garment, like not just what it looks like, but what is the function of it, and what is the
Yeah.
reason behind every decision that you're
How
making.
did we get there?
What's the reason behind every decision you're making? I love what you're saying. There's so many pieces to a design and how it will translate into how the garment is worn, how it will fit on every size, how it's going to look, how it's going to feel, how it's going to hold up. And like, why did you make this choice? And do you understand what the benefit is and what you might be giving up? Like,
Yeah. But I always say that design is art with a job to do.
I love that. Say that again. Design.
Design is art with a job to do.
That's good.
I love that. And that's really true, because then the function is what all these designs do. Like if I'm wearing the shawl, how does it function? How does it work? Of course, it's beautiful. It could be a piece on the wall, but it's got to work.
But it's got to work. Yeah. Like, why did you pick that fiber? What is it about the color? All those
Stitch
things are.
patterns look a certain way, but they also perform a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. or hang or
Exactly.
move, and especially in knitwear design, we have yarn overs, which is negative space. So how does that perform and how does that move and work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to scare anybody by making it sound too complicated, because I try to break things down in like little chunks so you can get through this design process. But, I think that's like one of the things when we're talking about design abstractly, because there's just so many possibilities, right? That it is kind of overwhelming to think about in the abstract. But one of the things that I love about doing Design Lab is that once we get in there, people have like one thing that they can focus on. And I think that starts to make all of these abstract concepts seem a lot more real and a lot more manageable.
Well, that's what's so great about your courses. You're offering guidance on all these things and in a really clear, good way. I mean, those are
Well,
good
thank you.
courses, I'm saying.
Thank you.
So what is the question you get asked the most?
Yeah, I think you guys asked me earlier. It was just like, how do I design a size inclusive pattern? And I'm like, oh, step by step.
Right. Right.
We start with the idea, get clear on that idea, learn everything you need to know about your own design, and then we get you in with a good quality size chart. And in both of my courses, I provide the size chart that I use personally. And once we get to that point, hopefully, you've got most everything that you need to finish the job.
That's excellent.
What advice would you give to a designer just starting out?
Maybe don't start with a raglan. That is from personal experience. My very first design that I published, I was like, I'm going to do a raglan because that was easy when I did it for myself. So this will be a piece of cake. Famous last words.
And let's talk about why. Let's talk a little bit about why.
It's really the seamless aspect of it. And so like you're just doing a lot at the same time. And so you are shaping the neckline, you are adding to the body circumference, you are adding to the sleeve circumference. And, like you have 8 different points at least that you're doing these increases on. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like how in the world am I supposed to do this? And, the same way that I teach my courses, I just had to go back and I'm like, I'm going to do this piece by piece. So how big does the body need to be? How big does my sleeve need to be? What is going on with my neck? And then, once I got through each one of those things, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to bring it all together.
Now, how do I write this as a pattern?
How do I write this as a pattern? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Let's not even talk about the notes that I didn't take. I thought I took great notes before I went to write this pattern. And I looked at it and it was basically like cast on, finish. And I was like,
well, and let's talk about the fact that raglan traditionally is increasing every other round seamlessly, right? And that only works in the middle sizes of the body, possible body sizes. So you get into the larger and the smaller, then you've got to do those shaping differently. And it can be difficult to write.
It can be difficult to write. And I think those sort of traditional rules of thumb are obviously great, right? Because they allow people to feel empowered to try something. But as you said, it only works for a kind of limited range of sizes. So like this is something I've been meditating on a lot, is kind of like that progression that people go from being a newbie maker or somebody who only works from patterns, and then how do they progress into creating their own garments, and then maybe how do they, if they want to end up in something like my class, because I think that's something certain people come in and they're like expecting a bunch of rules of thumb like that, where they can just be like, oh, I will increase every other row because that's how knitting goes. And I'm like, no, we're on another planet, I'm talking about relating every single measurement that you choose, like centimeters or inches, a measurement on the garment back to the body, and then we'll figure out what the stitch counts and what the row counts are going to be. Like, I don't deal really with those rules of thumb. Like we can talk about them if they are applicable, but that's not how I start out teaching.
They're a starting point, but they're not how you complete a design technically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us what you're excited about now.
What am I excited about now? Well, I've been saying a lot about Design Lab, and so I just did the first cohort. We started over the summer, and like I mentioned at the beginning, our final office hours are next week. And I've been talking with my current students, and they're really excited about continuing the office hours. And so I'm going to be continuing a couple more office hours in the final weeks and first couple of weeks into January. So final weeks of this year, first couple of weeks of January. And I'm also going to be opening up a very limited time. I'm going to be opening up Design Lab if anybody wants to try to sneak in here and do a little work on design. Yeah. I'm going to be opening up for 2 weeks. So you'll be able to join anytime between now and November 30th. So
that's very exciting.
That's an exciting opportunity. So possibly someone jumps in now, they could have a design ready for the crush of sweater designs that come out in the middle of next year, right?
In the middle of next year, yeah. So the course is 8 weeks long, and that's just the instruction. And we also have weekly live office hours, so support you through your making. We have an active private group that has not only anybody who would be joining this round, but everybody who joined in the inaugural round. So it's going to be a mix of people who are a little more practiced in their designing and people who are a little bit more at the beginning of their journeys. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've also heard from current students because, of course, there's a mix of people and their experiences before they even come into the course. And they're just all really excited to see each other's work, to help each other out and kind of work through the materials together. And like I said, having those office hours has been really, really helpful to all of them. So yeah, I'm excited to open this up to people and see what sort of new things are going to come out, because I know there's some people who I've been working with who came into the course and they're like, I've got 3 designs, I've got 4 designs. So,
wow, that's exciting.
Yeah. So they're finishing probably the first one right now when it comes to executing the samples, but we're going to keep this train going.
It's a really important piece of the courses that you're offering is the support factor, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just the material or the lessons that you're learning, it's the support for the students is huge. It's a huge piece of courses like this.
Be alone at it, right?
It's a huge piece. It's so valuable to have that.
Yeah, the not being alone and the accountability. That's what I've heard a lot.
And being able to ask questions and get feedback that you can use in your real work. I mean, it's great.
Yeah. I always try to make my courses focused on people's real work. So, they're not hypothetical. These are real projects and they do get published.
That's so exciting.
So one of our patrons, Jen, has a question. Julie, having come from the fashion design side, in addition to proper sizing, are there other aspects that you find knitwear designers lack information on?
I think like I've said, the technical aspects, sometimes like knitters will understand how the garment goes together. They understand what the shape is, but sometimes newer designers don't realize, like we were saying, the drawbacks to choosing certain constructions over others. And the other thing I would say is not necessarily that they don't understand fabric, like creating fabric. They understand swatching. But something that I always encourage my students to do when they're swatching is just to like change the needle size just for fun, like go 1 or 2 sizes up, go 1 or 2 sizes down, and just to see how that changes it. Because sometimes, you make a swatch and you're like, oh, I'm happy with that. But when you see it in a slightly finer gauge or more chunky gauge, you get a better understanding again of like what's going on with this fabric before we even get into the garment itself. And something that a lot of my students find is they're like, oh, I was really happy with that fabric, but I used slightly larger needle and all of a sudden the fabric's just a slightly bit, a little lighter. I'm going to use less yarn and it's actually going to come out a lot better. So I think just, embracing that design ethos and iterating, just trying things and not getting so hung up on your very first idea as it being the best, because there's usually at least a little something you could do to improve it.
Or riff on it later.
Or riff
like,
on it
oh,
later.
Hey, I'm going to make something else with this later.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wish I remembered what this said. I saw a really great quote today on The Creative Independent. It's a really great blog. It's all about like people who are creative in any sort of industry, and they ask really good questions. The interviews are incredible. And this one woman said, she was being inspired by seeing her son play with Legos. And she's just like, I think that's really how I build things now. Like she's like, for a while in my artistic practice, I had to make things smaller and, just like, personal size just for me. And now that I'm in a slightly different phase of life and different place in her creative career, she's like, I keep taking these little small things. And what I'm doing is like, I'm assembling them like blocks, and I take all these small things and I can accomplish great things with them. And I was just like, that really resonates.
That really fits well into what we are doing in this industry, taking all the little pieces and making something great, because there are only so many parts that we can put together.
Yeah, there are, but they can do so many things. It's really amazing. It's infinite. Somehow there's so little and it does so much.
Well, I want to hear what's on your needles, Julie. I mean, I hate to like put you in the spot here, but are you working on something exciting?
I don't have anything in reach. I do have something that my fantasy thing that I keep telling myself is I'm going to finish this in time to wear it over the weekend, but I will not. I will not. No, I am. Yeah, I've got this like deep V-neck sweater that I've been working on in hinterland. It's like an alpaca wool blend. Yeah, very luxy sort of thing. But yeah, that's what's on my needles right now.
Sarah's got something she's trying to wrap up. Did you get that sweater finished, Sarah?
No, I'm on the body. I'm working. Knitting. I have to do 25 rounds a day if I'm going to finish by Friday. We'll see if I get there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll have a Rhinebeck sweater. I'll have sweaters I wear at Rhinebeck, but
Your Rhinebeck sweater doesn't have to be a brand new sweater.
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't have to be.
Like a sweater you wear at Rhinebeck.
Exactly.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time together. Christina, you want to throw up
our fun question we ask
best
everybody?
Question.
What is your favorite knitting crochet notion?
Oh no. Okay. I think the one that gives me the most joy is I have these stitch markers from Busywork, and they have these little vintage beads on them and they look like fruit. And I just love seeing them. They're all different. So there's like an orange, a lemon, a cherry, a banana.
So it's time to mark something. You're like, which fruit am I today?
I'm like, which fruit am I today? Yeah, I think that's my favorite.
Stitch markers are the number one tool, I think, that most people
bring up.
Say
yeah.
that
What's funny to me about the stitch markers being what people most often answer is that they're all different kinds of stitch markers and for all different reasons, right? It's not that everybody says the same kind of stitch marker and for the same reason. There's so many different reasons people love their stitch markers and all different kinds of them. It's so cool.
Oh, can I do one more?
Yes.
I just got this was a gift, but I got the tulip interchangeable needle set, the wood ones, little bamboo guys. And I got my first interchangeable set maybe almost 5 years ago, and it was a Likey set, and I was always pretty happy with it. Cord kind of curls a little bit, but I'll live. These tulip things. I didn't know because you don't need the tool. And I was like, oh, I don't mind having the tool. And now I'm like, I don't need the tool. And it swivels at the bottom. I was like, oh my God.
I like
You didn't know what you were missing.
I didn't know what I was
swivel. I like
missing.
that.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know. I'm not really I love my luxury fibers, but when it comes to my tools, I'm usually start at the beginning sort of person. I don't need anything fancy. I just want to get it done. And now I was just like, do I need something fancy? I think I needed something fancy here. And maybe it's not fancy, but it fulfills a lot of things that I didn't realize were, mildly frustrating. And now now my problems are solved.
And now you can't go back. You're never going to be able to go back now.
I know. I still use both, but yeah, I'm like, oh, the tulip. I'm using the tulips right now. Oh, okay. I guess.
It makes it a joy to sit down and work on your pieces.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah,
what
the
it
right
does.
tools can make a huge difference.
Yeah, they really can.
So where can people find you online, Julie?
I am on Instagram at Julie at Work. I am on the internet generally at julieatwork.com. Julie at Work is my Ravelry handle. Yeah.
I love it. Julie at Work. You are doing excellent work. We are so happy that you could join us today. We've waited for a long time to get together with you here, and it's been
this is
fantastic.
so great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
A great conversation.
And
thanks
looking
for having
forward
me
to
again.
seeing you this weekend at Rhinebeck. Where will you be if people want to meet you in person?
I will be at Wool and Folk on Friday, and I will be at the actual Sheep and Wool Festival on Saturday, and I will be getting my official Tech Tip Talk book.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being here today. We will see you on Friday.
Yeah. See you Friday.
Thanks, Julie.
Take
We'll see you this
care.
weekend. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye. And
Sarah.
hey, moving things around.
Started pouring all of a sudden. I didn't know if you could hear me.
I can hear you. So everyone, we're going to be at Rhinebeck this weekend. This is our big book launch weekend. We will be at Wool and Folk on Friday. You'll probably just see us wandering around sometime in the afternoon, and then hanging out Saturday. What's happening?
Saturday we'll be at the Merritt Book Booth in Building B at the Sheep and Wool Festival, and in the middle of the day at noon, we're going to be at the Hill with see all the people
On Saturday.
on Saturday.
And if you have not purchased our book yet, and you are going to Rhinebeck and you would like to reserve a copy for us to sign, we'll put the link down in the comments below for you to reserve your copy. We're super excited to see you in person, and I got my pens. I brought my pens with me. Christina's got her fancy pen. And then on Sunday,
we're going to be at the book booth again in the morning. So you can find us there or roaming around.
In the afternoon. I want to go see sheep. So we'll see how it goes. This broadcast is made possible by our wonderful patrons. If you are interested in becoming a patron, whoops, I just go. Sorry, messing with it. Join us on patreon.com at Tech Tip Talk. The lowest that you can join is for just $5 a month, which is less than a coffee. And for $10 a month, you can have chat with us live twice a month. We get together for knit night, and we are available to you $50 a month for one-on-one sessions with us once a month, which is pretty awesome deal if you ask me. So come on and join.
Our patrons are a great group. We love them. They're pretty special humans. So
we'd love for you to be a part of that. So come on over and join us. And when's our next broadcast?
Next broadcast is November 13th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Same channel.
same time. And we will see you guys then. And I hope we get to see some of you in person this weekend. If you see us, say hi. Don't hesitate to stop us and give us a hug. I'm a hugger. Ooh.
Yeah, do not stop us and say hi. Absolutely.
We'll see you at Rhinebeck if you're going, and we'll see you next month. Bye. Thanks for being here. Oh, wait, I got to do the outro. I'm going to
The
actually
outro.
do it this time. Here we go. Bye, everyone.